Let's move on to Nigeria now. The British government has halved the amount given to Nigeria for the fight against Boko Haram. Now, this comes in the wake of a joint visit to the country by Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, and the International Development Secretary, Priti Patel. Now, the two are in Nigeria. They witnessed how the UK's military has been training the Nigerian counterparts in the battle against Boko Haram. On Wednesday, the UK government announced a $257 million aid package to Nigeria for a 4-year period that would basically run from around 2018 to 2022. That amounts to about $64 million a year, and it's a decline compared to the last batch grant. At the same time, Patel has called for more efforts from Nigeria in the battle against the jihadists. Right then, so let's get the latest details from Nigeria. Deji Badmus joins us now live on the line from Lagos. So, Deji, has there been any formal reaction to this announcement from Aso Rock?
Not exactly, Rama. We haven't heard anything at all from Aso Rock. Nothing has been said by the president. No government official has spoken on this just yet. So it remains a matter of wait and see.
Indeed. So let's look at the disaster itself. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees says it needs about $250 million just to deal with the humanitarian disaster caused by Boko Haram up north. But right now, it's only gotten about a third of that money. Why is it having such a serious problem raising the funds needed to deal with a massive catastrophe?
Well, Brahma, I think the basic problem would be donor fatigue. Remember that sometime last year, the UNHCR actually organized a fundraiser, and a lot of countries actually made pledges. A lot of people made pledges, and some of those pledges have actually not been redeemed. So donor fatigue could also be a problem. You also have to consider the fact that apart from Nigeria, you also have a similar crisis in Sudan, and that is facing famine. You have same problem too in the Middle East, places like Yemen, for instance. I mean, I'm talking about South Sudan, sorry. You have places like Yemen, even Chad and Cameroon here, you have similar problems. So it's all part of the problem. Nigeria is not the only country that the UN needs this money for, and raising money too is becoming difficult. Let's not also forget the fact that you have some kind of global recession going on at the moment. You know, globally, economies are struggling. So it's all adding up to, you know, to making it difficult for these agencies now to raise the money they need. But what we're beginning to see, Rama, is that in the absence of these international funding coming in, we're beginning to see local funding coming in. I mean, we have rich Nigerians who are making some serious contributions, even though they are not as massive as you would expect. But to be candid, some Nigerians, some businessmen here like Aliko Dangote, Africa's richest man, and of course some top business executive in this country have been making large donations now to the cause to help the people in the northeast of the country. Indeed.
One last question for you, Det. I mean, the sheer scale of the tragedy is massive. Over 20,000 people killed, over 2 million more displaced. So just for the sake of argument, if Boko Haram can be reduced to a gang that's just an occasional nuisance, how much money would we need to actually rebuild the infrastructure destroyed by this group, and also to resettle the millions who've been displaced across that entire Lake Chad basin?
Well, the government set up a body called the Northeast Development or Reconstruction Initiative now. That body came up, actually met with the United Nations and other international agencies. They came up with an estimate of around $9 billion. But, you know, it could be far more than that, because in Borno State is the most affected. That is the home, that's the spiritual home of Boko Haram. That's where this whole insurgency started from. And that state has actually borne the brunt of Boko Haram attacks. As a matter of fact, we're beginning to see Boko Haram, you know, we're beginning to see less number of attacks now in other places of the Northeast, but more in Borno State. The governor came out some time ago to say what the state would require to build the hundreds of homes, hospitals, schools, police stations, and other public infrastructure destroyed in that state would be in the region of, say, $6 to $7 billion. I mean, that's quite massive. Of course, the state government has begun reconstruction with the support of the central government in Nigeria. But you know, what is actually needed altogether from what we're getting from this body now set up by the Nigerian government, $9 billion, but it could be more when you consider the fact that the Borno state government is saying it would need around between $6 and $7 billion now. And you also consider the extent of damage and destruction in other states in the Northeast, because Borno state is not the only state affected. 2 core states are also affected. I'm talking about Yobe and Adamawa. So you do the mathematics, we're looking at billions of dollars here. So no question at all that you know, it's going to take years to rebuild the Northeast, because it's difficult to see this money. The money is now coming in droves, as we would expect.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. It's quite a tragic story. Thank you for the update. That, of course, is Deji Ban was there live in Lagos.